Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program here in the beautiful webcast1lives.com studios in the skywalk of the lovely downtown Des Moines. We are here every night, every Tuesday night from 6 to 7. I'm Lefty, and I'm here with my effervescent counterpart, Dr. Patrick McCroche. What's up, Doc?
Hey, you know what? This is either going to be one of those shows that's going to be wonderful, or it's going to be one of those that no matter what happens, the gremlins are going to get us.
Oh man, don't oversell it, because I like to keep expectations low when we do this show and podcast.
Let me just say then, keep your expectations low, because on the way here, I completely spaced off my turn on to 235. And then I come in here, and we're supposed to have one of the best announcers I've ever heard, a guy named T. Scott, who announces the fights for World War Fighting Championships, among other things. He was going to call in today at 6:05. I haven't heard back since I gave him the time, so hopefully he'll call in and we can discuss fights a little bit. And then starting up, our usually infallible Frank was fallible. So
that's, I don't even want to countenance that happening. So let's it was stunning. And Frank is sporting a mohawk. Oh, fantastic. Get me a little bit of perspective. Give me a little background, because you know that I am an expert at all things MMA, that I know everything there is to know about the fisticuffs and the it's a hexagon, I think, is right.
Yep.
Okay, but I'd like to know. So just tell everybody, because I don't think we've talked a little bit about this in the past.
Yes,
but we haven't discussed sort of your connection in a personal, professional way, and your history with helping getting mixed martial arts. And is it just mixed, or do you do boxing too?
I can do it all.
Sure. Getting that off the ground, because in Iowa, it's only in the last 10 years really started to pick up and take off.
MMA.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of your background and what you do?
Well, of course. Well, I got my sports med training in part through my brother Mike, who is a sports med guy. He's a sports med psychiatrist, and he's kind of inspired me to do that. And the other part of it was when I was down in Florida, I did a lot of sports medicine work. But MMA started really taking off about 10 years ago with the UFC. And the UFC had been around about 10 years before, trying to get some traction. Here locally, we have two major competitors. One is MCC and one is WWFC, which is World War Fighting Championships. And WWFC, I think, is the one that has professional fighters. And they'll have people like Josh Neer and Paul Bird, Sean Huffman, Brian Green, Victor Moreno. These are all people that are big names in MMA. There is a guy named Jeremy Stevens who has fought for the UFC nationally, and occasionally he comes in, and he's a local fighter. So they set up these fights and bring in some of the best fighters from all over Iowa. One of the things that is attractive about MMA here in Iowa, at least, is you have to have some kind of wrestling skill. If you don't wrestle, you're going to have a hard time in the octagon, okay, or in the hexagon, as the case may be.
Septagon.
The septagon.
It's a polyhedral shape. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
The polyhedron.
Something like that.
So anyway, the fights were this weekend. There's two title bouts that both were excellent. One was Jordan Young, and his mom is my real estate agent. And so that's kind of how I got tied in with WWFC in the first place. And Jordan, who is a giant of a kid before he lost weight. I mean, he was built like me at about 6'2", and now he's probably, he's 6'2", and I think he fought at 180 pounds. Now, I may be wrong on that number, but he was somewhere around there. And he fought a guy named Brody J, who was ripped out of his gourd. Now, he didn't look quite as big as The Rock, but he still looked pretty big. And so it was quite a tussle between the two of them, which was absolutely fantastic to watch and quite fun. And, of course, Jordan came out on top, and it was a title fight, so they did really well. The other, and that was an amateur bout, and then it was Anthony Bacam, and for the life of me, I knew as soon as they started to say it, his opponent just flew out of my head. That was a terrific fight as well. And it ended in a submission.
So, Doc, let me ask you a quick question about this. Because you said something that I'm sort of curious about. Given Iowa's long history with wrestling, Iowa's been a wrestling state for an awfully long time. Do you see fighters, amateur fighters, especially local boys from around the state, folks coming from Iowa, do they have a disproportionate sort of like wrestling acumen, or maybe they go to wrestling moves a little bit more often? Because I don't think that wrestling is the only thing these guys are doing. Am I wrong?
No, they do a whole range of things. But the trick with wrestling is in MMA, it's different than boxing in that you can take your opponent to the ground. And it's different than kickboxing in the fact that, you pretty much have to stay upright. When you take your opponent to the ground, wrestling provides great opportunities to get out of whatever hold they're trying to get you in, whether it's jiu-jitsu, karate, whatever their particular school comes from. Just like Brock Lesnar, he was a giant. He's a giant man, and he was I think he was from South Dakota and was a state wrestling champion, and went to the WWE. And Brock Lesnar is a giant of a man and won all of his bouts, not through boxing, but through taking opponents to the ground and out wrestling them. Well, you have to have those skills. So it's very popular here in Iowa. It's very visually exciting as well. There's a lot of people from, Marshalltown, Osceola, Creston. There's a lot of people that go that fight. And there's four of the biggest names professionally in MMA are here in Des Moines. Victor Moreno, Brian Green, Jeremy Stevens, and for the life of me, and Jordan Young now. Because Jordan Young, he went and trained in Vegas. I think he might be trying to go pro now. But it was really an exciting thing. Now, the other thing about this is what a sports doc does ringside, because Iowa has a law that says before you put on anything like this, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, MMA, anything like that, you have to have a physician ringside. And you have to get approved by the state. So I'm one of 8 physicians approved for a state of 3 million people. So there's only 8 of us in the state. And so we go from, a lot of times I'll travel up to Mason City. When we get back, we're going to start talking about Trayvon Martin, because apparently T. Scott, he got called away on business, but he's probably not going to be able to call in. We'll be back right after the break. Stay tuned to Doc and Lefty. You're listening to us on Webcast One Live, or on webcast1live.com every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m.
Dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittysusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. At the top of the show, the doc talked about Gremlins getting into the works, and we just got our first one. I think that our MMA announcer friend, Mr. Scott, either lost the number or just wasn't that into us. I don't know. But
no, he's into us. He sent me a text, but he's still in the conference.
Oh, so, I see.
Well,
maybe he can call back a little bit later on in the show, because I'm sure that we'll be talking about some sort of physical altercation throughout the hour. But you said a few things. I wanted to ask you a few more questions about some of the stuff, because I'm really interested in sort of the culture that Iowa's kind of building up. Now, I'm personally not very plugged in to the MMA or the boxing scene around here or anything like that, but I did go to a lot of duels, a lot of wrestling duels when I was a student at the University of Iowa, which is the mecca of all things wrestling everywhere in the country. And I'm wondering, do you see folks that have a sort of like a real talent for wrestling, kind of like the Greco-Roman style wrestling in MMA? And if you do they have any sort of discernible advantage over the guys that you see kind of doing roundhouse kicks and arm holds and things like that?
Well, there's a definite advantage if you're really good at. There's a couple of specialties that are good at what they call the ground and pound, which is you take them to the ground and then you pound on them good. And Muay Thai is one, Jiu-Jitsu is another one, but the best one is wrestling. Simply because you learn the basics. If you learn the basics early on wrestling, when you're in a position, because there's something called the rear naked choke, which is basically you get behind them and put them in a Nelson of some kind, and you try to choke them out. Then you have triangle bar, all that other stuff. Well, if you're a wrestler, you can get out of that stuff a lot easier because you know the basic body mechanics when you're trying to get out. If you're a boxer, you can do really well. But the moment you get taken to the ground, if you don't have any wrestling background, it's going to be tough for you. There are people that specialize in jiu-jitsu from the time they're children. They can do all right, but I will tell you, Iowa boys do really well in MMA and people from wrestling states simply because once they get to the ground, they don't panic. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to sit there and have somebody trying to choke you and maintain calm and figure out how you're going to get out of it. And we saw that several times this weekend. So,
sure. What are some of the duties of a ringside fight doc?
Well, they really, it's to evaluate, make sure the fighter is in good shape, that there's no last minute problems going on. Last year there was a fighter with a crushed cheek, and he purposely didn't tell me that he had it. And, of course, during the fight, he got it crushed again. And that's an emergency. So, it's one of these things where, you hold the eyeball in and you say, listen, you got to get to the hospital now. But my thing is not treatment, but stabilization. So when people get knocked out, I'm the one that kind of determines where that person needs to go after this. The state of Iowa is pretty good. If you've gotten knocked out, it's a 45-day suspension. You can't work out, you can't fight, you can't do anything like that, which I think is pretty good. A lot of times it's, blood, people get, hit and, they get cuts on their face. And once you get scar tissue there, they're much more likely to bleed. And, and if you're sitting ringside, which is where I'm at, if you don't get spattered with blood every once in a while, then, it's not a very exciting fight. It's not a very exciting evening. And so it's one of these things where, my job is basically to make sure everything's functional when they go in. A lot of times these kids will have murmurs, right? And, most of the time that's not a problem, but they need to be checked out and make sure they have blood work done. You can't be positive for any kind of liver disease. You can't be positive for HIV. They haven't gone to the herpes thing yet, but I'm pretty sure that's the next step. If you screen positive for herpes, you're not going to be allowed to fight simply because, wrestlers, that's a real problem with wrestlers anymore. And, all the mats are filled with herpes and you spread that around quite a bit. And, getting herpes on your face, is not the best experience in the world. The other responsibilities is the post-fight check. Up in Mason City, there was a guy who walked off and his jaw was so swollen, I couldn't tell anything. So I told him, I said, listen, put ice on that. And at the end of the night, let me know. Well, when I go back to recheck, it's swollen down, that jaw is busted. So now he's got to go to the doctor. And so I'm the one that's kind of a gatekeeper and trying to maintain these kids' health. One of the funny things is these guys will get cut. And if I say, well, I don't have the skills to stitch that up, because particularly around the eyes, I can't lay them out there on the table right there and stitch around the eyes. Just, I can't do it. They'll go, well, it'll be a cool scar. I don't need it. So it's really, and the other thing is the culture of this is absolutely alpha male. And I don't want to say fighters are stupid, because they're not. It's like baseball players. They're not stupid, but they're so dedicated and so obsessive about their training. Really, they don't have room for the other things in life, right? I mean, they really don't have room to go to business school. Their training, I mean, if you're trying to get ready to go, it's a full-time job. I know Jordan, the new champion, I bet you he spent at least 6 hours a day in the gym for the last 3 months trying to get himself ready for this fight. And the guy he fought against, Brody J, I know did more work than that. It's just that, it just happened to go Jordan's way this time, but they were very evenly matched. So it's really kind of exciting.
That's unbelievable. I was wondering, you said 45 days, and I assume that's for concussion related injuries and to make sure that we don't have guys getting their bells rung too often because of all the new research that's come out. Do you see, or do you know personally any data? Is MMA, as far as concussions are concerned, like traumatic head injuries, safer or less safe than, say, a traditional boxing match?
They're much safer because you have to keep in mind the idea behind a boxing match is to knock the other person out. In other words, to cause an injury severe enough to the brain that the other person cannot function. That's not the objective in MMA. In MMA, the objective obviously is to win, but there's many different ways you can win. You can knock your opponent out, but that's not what generally MMA fighters try to do. One, it's very difficult. And two, it takes, you're talking professional heavyweight boxers fight 15 rounds. That's a solid, 45 minutes. Well, these MMA people, amateurs are around for 15 minutes, and the professionals are in there for 25. So even if it was just a straightforward punch fest, it's not going to really work the way, you're not going to be able to knock them out. On the other hand, we might have a caller, I hope. Any caller, Frank? Yeah, all right. So we have a caller. Let's put on our headphones.
Hey, caller, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, welcome to Doc and Lefty. How you doing?
Hey, how we doing today, guys?
Not too bad. Is this our good friend, Mr. Scott?
Yep, it's Keith Scott, man. What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Hey, we're doing all right. I got the Doc here. I know that he was anxiously awaiting your completion of your conference.
Right on, man. I was at a conference in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so I'm stepping away so I can actually join the show because I've been wanting to do this for quite some time now. So I'm making that golden opportunity worthwhile.
Hey, listen to this guy butter up the other kid from Sioux Falls, South Dakota in the room.
Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you now. I keep wanting to get him in the studio. This guy is not only the best looking announcer I've ever seen, with the exception of Diamond Dave. I can't diss Diamond Dave, but not only is he the best looking announcer, he's probably one of the snazziest dressers you could get a hold of. So
well, I appreciate that, but there's always somebody better. You can't really compare me to like a Bruce Buffer.
No. Now unfortunately you called right before the break. Can you hang out a minute and then give us a call, and then we'll get back to you in a minute after we run our commercials?
I would be happy to.
Great. We'll be back right after the break. Listen to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Lefty, the Doc and Lefty. Thanks for sticking around so far. We've got ringside, or not even ringside, we got MMA announcer extraordinaire T. Scott on the line with us, who's good enough to stick around through the break. T, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Hey,
Sir.
I know that Pat wanted to talk to you about the fights this past weekend. So, Doc, why don't you take it away?
Now, one of the things I want to ask you right off the bat, because this is going to be important to a debate Lex Luthor over there and I are going to have later in the show. One of the things I've noticed is in MMA, weight really doesn't mean a lot, or it does mean something, but height is more important. Have you seen something similar to that? Would you agree with that statement?
I would definitely agree with that statement. I mean, we had that prime example this weekend. Obviously, this past Saturday, we had Jordan Young against Brody J. Now, looking at Brody J, obviously he looked like he almost even outweighed his opponent. Although they did weigh in at the same weight, Brody definitely looked like a more superior, maybe could be defined as maybe a superior athlete. However, looking at Jordan Young, here you have a guy that's nearly over 6 foot tall and has the reach, the flexibility, the ability to do things that most people can't do, as being maybe kind of more muscular and short and maybe stocky, if you will say.
All right. So since I outweighed Jordan by a solid 120 pounds, do you think that I could take Jordan in a fight?
I think it all depends on experience, to tell you the truth. I believe that experience, how well you have trained in regards to how well your cardio is involved. If you have great cardio, I think that is really what truly separates superior athletes from others. Not just a matter of what their expertise is in. You can be a great boxer, but get outboxed by somebody that has better endurance than you.
All right. So now out of this weekend's fights, well, first of all, I should ask, what's your experience? What made you want to get into being an announcer, and how much experience do you have in announcing?
Well, I've been in the announcement game or the MMA game for a little over about 8 years now. I actually do practice mixed martial arts. I happen to have 2 stripes on a very white belt, as you would say, but I have 2 stripes. I have the from Pat Kern and Pedro Sauer is the belt system that I work with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I have had some definitely time on the mat with some of these guys that I've even announced for. So as getting into the game, obviously I have a little bit of an knack to talk on a mic and entertain people and have that energy that definitely I think needs to be done for shows such as mixed martial arts.
All right. Now, what did you think? Now, how did you get involved with World Warrior Fighting Championships, and what did you think the best fight was this weekend?
I've been good friends with Paul Bird, and definitely known Josh Neers through over the years, obviously, all the way back to the Toad Holler days when basically, if you want to call the barroom boxing or barroom brawls, would take place where people were just basically going in and checking their manhood inside a cage and duking it out. That's where I kind of knew all those guys from. But announcing for some of the local scenes of the sport, I've gotten involved with that and just grew, had a good relationship with Paul and Josh to start working for them.
Well, great. Now, I have another friend of mine on the phone, Dr. Tommy O from New York, who's also a fight doc. Tom, welcome to the show. Is he on there, Frank? Uh-oh. We lost somebody. So anyway, what did you think? Tommy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Now we have T. Scott on the phone, and he's a pretty good announcer. He's got the same kind of style and grace that Diamond Dave does.
Right.
Yeah. So, hey, T. Scott, are you there?
No, I still am, sir.
All right. Now, what are some of the things? What's some of the things that you watch for in a fight, Scott, that indicates to you who's getting the upper hand?
Well, obviously, control of the pace. Who's really truly making more contact? Meaning, how many punches are actually being connected? How many takedowns? I mean, if you do follow the sport of MMA, I mean, the rules and guidelines that even the golden corral of UFC, the Bellators, the Strike Forces. They all have the same type of guidelines or rules or unification rules of them mixed martial arts. So
Okay.
the octagon control, I believe, is one of them. Obviously, effective striking and overall control of the fight, really how the fights were scored.
All right.
So I think any of those, as long as you have control of one of those or the majority of those, you're probably going to be the one that comes out on top if it goes to a decision.
All right. Now, Tommy, thanks for joining us. One of the questions that Blake asked earlier is there a difference between stand-up boxing and MMA, and what are the different injury risks for each?
Right. Well, each there are inherent risks in both sports, and there are differences because of the type of techniques. Where stand-up boxing or traditional boxing, it's where you're only using your fists, so you only have punches. There will be no elbows, no grappling. You're not allowed to take someone down. There are no kicks, no feet other than just your movement. And depending on your style, whether you're a brawler or an actual boxer, because there are different styles, depending on your genetic build. Like, I'll just give an example. Like Tyson, he was more of a brawler because he was short compared to other heavyweights, and he was just a powerhouse, so he was going to blow through you versus someone who liked to dance and actually box, and you'd have like a Muhammad Ali. He had a different style where he would do the rope-a-dope and wear someone down. With the mixed martial arts, it has more of the, as stated in the name, you have the martial arts aspect. So you will have boxing, but then you have the martial arts component. You'll have the grappling, you'll have blocks, you'll have the kicks, you'll have takedowns with the strikes. And the key is to, I guess both of you want to knock them out, but there's all different types of knockouts. Like you can have a TKO, technical knockout versus a complete knockout where the guy is unconscious.
Okay.
You can have one that gets blocked.
Hey, Tommy,
out.
we got about 30 seconds before our next break.
Okay.
I got a very simple question to ask you. What do you think is the most physically important aspect as far as an advantage a fighter might have? Would it be height or would it be weight?
I think it depends on which sport you're talking about. If with boxing,
MMA.
Okay, mixed martial arts. For me, what I'm seeing now, because I cover mixed martial arts, your shorter, stockier guys, not necessarily like bodybuilders, but someone who's a little bit thicker, they seem to have because they're able to wrestle with the grappling versus your tall, lanky. Even though the lanky will have a better kick, but from what I've been seeing, like the shorter guy, that's a little bit more stockier. Their body style seems to do better. They have more of that wrestling component or the jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
That's just my opinion of what I've seen.
All right. Well, I want to thank both T. Scott and Tommy for calling in. I know T. Scott's got to go. Thanks a lot for calling in, Scott.
Appreciate the invite. I'd love to help you guys again.
Yeah, well, we'll have you on next time we got some fights going on. Tom, thanks for calling all the way from New York and giving us your opinion. We'll be back right after the break. We're going to be talking about the George Zimmerman verdict and some of the craziest conspiracy theories I've heard in a while. Trust me, there's some crazy ones out there. We'll be back right after the break. You listen to Doc and Lefty from 6 to 7 p.m. every Tuesday here on webcast1live.com.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician.
From Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. How about the first half of that show? It's not every day that I get taken to school and learn something about a discipline that I really don't know square one about. I really don't. I don't know anything about fighting. I don't know anything about MMA. I don't know anything about boxing. So I thought that was really interesting, and I want to thank Tommy and T. Scott for calling in and being able to talk to somebody who's an expert at it, but also to educate a poor schlub like myself. Well, anyway, Doc, probably the biggest story over the last...
Well, before we segue into the next one, there's a frequent listener that we have that we'll call Joey the Weasel, and he said that his favorite technique whenever he gets in a fight is a shot to the cojones. And so I just wanted to pass that on because that's the kind of Street Fighter Joey the Weasel is.
Yeah, there's not a lot of honor, but and perhaps that kind of tracks nicely with what we're about to talk about. So probably the biggest story, and certainly the story that caught my attention on Friday night when it happened, and that was because we're out at the baseball game, and it just one of those jarring things was the verdict out of the Florida, out of the George Zimmerman trial. Obviously, George Zimmerman was on trial for second-degree murder and manslaughter of Trayvon Martin, the teenage kid who Mr. Zimmerman approached in a gated community in Sanford, Florida, and after an altercation of some kind, Trayvon Martin wound up dead, and Mr. Zimmerman wound up on trial for his killing, and a lot of ink has already been spilled, and a lot of voices have already chimed in since this past weekend about this, and of course in the year prior. And I was sort of waiting to give my take on the whole thing until we got together, because sometimes you don't see off camera and off the air is and maybe what we should start having somebody follow us around. The really interesting discussions happen when we're walking out to our cars and one of us is maybe crossing the street, or we're walking down the street, or we're doing something. Or
shoving somebody into the street.
Yeah, something like that. And that's when Doc and I take the gloves off, so to speak.
Because, we're Max rules here for the studio is, it has to be civil, no hate speech, and you can't swear. Well, honest to goodness, we're hate speeching each other back and forth all the time. We couldn't obviously air that here on the studio.
It's true, although I will say I don't remember the last time I actually swore in your direction. So I think
and that's true.
I think I'm getting better, because I used to swear a blue streak at pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
But no, so and there have been a lot of different ins and outs. Initially, it was all about the stand your ground law in Florida. And if people don't know, stand your ground is sort of a codified version of the common law self-defense, except it's been tweaked and it's a little bit more specific in the sense that in Florida, you now no longer have to retreat. There are a lot of states and a lot of common law interpretation of self-defense that say that if you can get away, you should get away. And that to assert self-defense, you have to sort of disengage from your attacker. And Florida says, no, you can use deadly force against somebody if you feel that your life is threatened, if you're fear your life or a serious bodily injury, and you don't have that duty to kind of disengage or retreat. And a lot of folks I think that it's a strange law to have codified, number one, but that was sort of a dog whistle to the gun control folks saying, well, this is going to lead to people, taking their guns out and increased violence and to the gun sort of supporting the Second Amendment folks saying, hey, this is just an extension of the Castle Doctrine. American law has always really, recognized the Castle Doctrine and what's more sort of personal than my own personal space when I'm out doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So that was the first confusing thing. The second confusing thing is that you had a guy who, and I'm going to be a little bit insensitive, I think, when I say this, looked white. And that's only because a lot of the folks who are sort of pro George Zimmerman were quick to point out that he's not Caucasian, which for me doesn't make a whole lot of difference, because if you're a racist person, you're a racist person. It doesn't matter what color you are or what your ethnic background is.
Let's talk about race.
Yes.
let's have an honest discussion about race.
But I'm setting this up just really quick, and I know that I'm taking a little bit.
We have about
a little
2
time.
minutes before.
So I'll set the exposition up, and then we'll talk about it in the next segment. So the second thing was this racial component, and these folks really beating the race drum about this. You had on the one side folks saying, well, here's another example of because if people remember, the police were not going to press charges at first, and so the African American community and the national media jumped on that and said, well, here you have a black kid gunned down in the street by a white guy, and they're not going to do anything. This is 1955 Mississippi. This is 1964 Alabama all over again. What are we going to do? And that was the second thing that really overshadowed just the tragedy of the situation. And after the break, we'll kind of get into that a little bit more and discuss some of the ins and outs of this case.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back right after it. I think when we start the next segment, we're going to read Florida's Stand Your Ground law and why I think that, obviously, I think Blake and I agree, why the defense didn't try to use that. We'll be back right after the break. Listen, Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com.
Troche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. So, Doc, we're talking a little bit. We're talking about the George Zimmerman trial. We're talking about the tragic death of Trayvon Martin, and I mentioned in the opener to this segment of the show that part of the first confusing issue in this case was the Florida Stand Your Ground, commonly known as Stand Your Ground. We're going to talk about some of that. And you've got the computer right over there.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to read it. I'm just going to sum it up real quick. If you want to read it, it's right online. But essentially, what this is. The old law, and I believe it's common law, and I think you told me that earlier, Common law is if somebody invades your house, you have to get out of your house. If somebody comes after you with a gun, you're not allowed to shoot back at them. You got to run. Well, basically, this says if there's somebody who's taking somebody or breaking into your place or had broken into your place, which is part of the castle law, there's stand your ground and castle laws, then you're allowed to respond with deadly force if you feel your life is in imminent danger.
That's mostly it, but not quite. The common law. Go ahead.
The part that really gets stuck here is confusion. Is a person who is not. Oh, sorry, wrong segment. A person who unlawfully and by force enters or attempts to enter a person's dwelling is presumed to be doing so with the intent to commit an unlawful act. And that's part of the thing that I think a lot of people get upset about is, you're presumed guilty on this. The other thing is you only have to have, you don't actually have to have the fact that you were in danger, just the fact that you perceived you were in danger.
Well, the first part of that statute, the opening clause, is really important because it's talking about the presumption of imminent bodily harm, and I think that's really what people had the issue with, is that rather than now and common law self-defense, if you were attacked in your home, you didn't necessarily have to flee your home. You had to sort of or try if you could. If you couldn't, if a reasonable person couldn't disengage from violent confrontation, then they obviously couldn't disengage. But if a reasonable person would have been able to disengage from that was evidence that you weren't the primary aggressor, and that's the whole issue with self-defense. If you are the primary aggressor, you do not get to assert self-defense until such time as the aggressor switches to the other person. So if you or I are in a physical confrontation and I'm deemed to be the primary aggressor because I'm the one hitting you and you're sort of taking defensive actions and you are trying to sort of lashing out, trying to hit me in a defensive posture, that changes if I trip and fall and then you start kicking me in the ribs. Then that aggressor standpoint shifts. The Florida law says there is a presumption that you are in fear of imminent bodily harm if the aggressive party, if the person that you are afraid of, does any of these certain following things. And that's a departure from typical self-defense, because self-defense in other states, especially in Iowa, is an affirmative defense. If you have a rebuttable presumption, and you still have to raise that as an affirmative defense, that you're going to assert the stand your ground law, but a rebuttable presumption shifts the burden from the defendant to the prosecution, which makes it a more difficult presumption. They would have to still prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you didn't seek to defend yourself, but an affirmative defense makes it a little bit harder of a sell in a criminal trial.
Well, and let's be clear, our point here tonight is not to retry George Zimmerman, and it's not to rehash the stuff, because you can get all that online and it's not really going to change opinions. But one of the things about the stand your ground law is back in the day when I was growing up, if somebody broke into your home, raped your wife, beat your children, tried to kill you, and as he's running off and you shoot him, if he landed outside your door or even in the doorway, suddenly you're guilty of murder. Now, earlier you said, well, geez, it's kind of it's kind of a swing back to the NRA or something like that, or did I mishear?
I dog whistled to gun control folks who took the Trayvon Martin shooting as evidence to stand your ground was a bad idea, as if the two could be conflated that way. Yeah. I'm not so certain, but my take on the acquittal, I do believe that there is a danger now that folks of a same mindset of George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman's mindset has been very distinguishedly, well,
he started a crime and was trying to do something about it. That was his mindset.
Well, his mindset was, I'm going to step in and involve myself. In my opinion, and this is just my take on this, if you are in a dangerous situation, unless you are involved in law enforcement or you're a firefighter or whatever, and you're in a dangerous situation, I don't know that it is spectacularly reasonable to dive right in, be that sort of superhero kind of person, unless you're looking to save somebody's life. You know, unless I'm saving you, Doc, from drowning, if I'm walking down the street and I see someone who looks suspicious but isn't really doing anything, just kind of walking in front of me, I don't know that I then engage with that person. And I feel like this acquittal vindicated that behavior.
Well, but there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, we've talked about this before. There's a lot of unknowns here. Did George Zimmerman get out and pursue Trayvon Martin? Nobody knows.
Yes, he did actually. They do know that. That was a statement he gave the police.
That he actually got out and tried to follow. Now, what he said, or what had been said several times, that he got out to check the house number. Now, let's say he did get out and follow Trayvon Martin.
He was losing line of sight.
You're allowed to do that. I mean, you're allowed to follow people. That's not against the law. Now, he did have a gun. I'm going to tell you, as a responsible gun owner, he shouldn't have got out of the car. He shouldn't have followed Trayvon Martin. Yeah, we know that in hindsight. The problem is, here is George Zimmerman living in a neighborhood, then burglarized over and over and over. And one of the things I keep thinking about is it may be that Trayvon Martin didn't catch George Zimmerman's eye because he was black, but because of the way he was wearing, but because of the clothes he was wearing. If they show a picture of Trayvon Martin wearing a white hoodie, there's a world of difference in perception between a white hoodie and black hoodie. He was wearing baggy pants. There's a picture of him buying his stuff at the convenience store. Here he has big baggy pants and the hood. Well, if I see a white guy dressed like that, I'm going to be suspicious. If I see a black guy, I'm going to be suspicious. If I see a yellow guy, I'm going to be suspicious, simply because of the clothing. Now I'm going to disagree with Lefty over here. If you have a gun, you're a responsible gun owner. You're not going to be getting out of the car. You're not going to be chasing this person down, because you understand one of the core tenets of responsible gun ownership is maintain control of your weapon. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're following somebody you think has stolen something.
No, and actually, you're not disagreeing. I agree with you. But once again, that goes to George Zimmerman's mindset, and that goes to the mindset of folks who think like him, which is, I'm going to save the day, and I have the means to do it. His whole defense rested on the idea that he was dumb, out of shape, that he was just sort of, he made a lot of wrong choices and whatever, and that he was scared. I don't know anybody who follows somebody and the person that's doing the following is armed, who's acting in a particularly frightened way. That seems to me to be a less of a frightened sort of mindset and more of a I'm thinking something's going to go down, and I'm ready for it.
Right. Now, we're going to be back right at the break. For our last segment, we're going to finish up with some conspiracy theories, and maybe we'll get a little bit of race issues in there. I think maybe next week we ought to have just an entire segment on racial issues, and try to bring somebody in, that may be a person that could speak intelligently to us as well. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. Go ahead. We like to thank our sponsors. See, I told you.
Yeah.
I told you. Don't get your hopes up.
Yep. All kinds of gremlins today.
Yes. Polk County GOP. We'd like to thank them for sponsoring our show. There's their address and website, or not. Yeah, that's their website and phone number. See, I'm telling you. They had Westside Conservative Breakfast Club this morning. Sam Clovis came to speak, and it was an excellent speech. He's running for Senate in the open seat for Iowa. We'd also like to thank Des Moines Anesthesia for sponsoring our show. They have two offices, one in Des Moines, one in Fort Dodge. They're ready to take your patients. They accept all insurances. So if you're having a pain issue, please give them a call, 244-3700. They do have a nurse that answers the phone. I think it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's pretty handy and nice. Again, please visit our sponsors if you have need of their services. Now back to the show. All right.
Do you think now? There's, like I said, there's been a lot of confusing different kinds of takes on this, and not any one singular one defines the entire tragedy that occurred. But something that was brought to my attention this morning is sort of shocking to me. And sort of, I don't know that if it necessarily proves racism involved in this case, but it definitely it demonstrates there's some kind of ick factor that I can't really put my finger on. A friend of mine received an email this morning from somebody a mutual friend of ours who we both know and respect. And that email contained sort of a long colloquy about the real Trayvon Martin, and it was accompanied by a picture of a very menacing looking African-American gentleman, a lot of tattoos all over his body, a face tattoo. He looked very, very well built, very tall, strong, and was glowering at the camera having his picture taken and saying that the pictures of Trayvon Martin that were circulated by the news media were not really him. This was the person who was actually Trayvon. This is what he looked like at 17 years old. And it turns out that was a fake, that the picture of that person was actually a picture of a well-known rapper who is still alive and performing concerts, and wasn't Trayvon Martin at all. There's a lot of this going around.
Yeah.
And I guess my question to you is, other than being just distasteful, do you think that it's distasteful to kind of trash a victim of a homicide? That's really what it was. It was a homicide.
Well, yeah,
even if it wasn't murder, it was definitely a homicide.
I think it is distasteful. Part of my opinion is twofold. One, I'm not a big fan of letting the media into these kind of trials.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly.
Because there's no good that comes from this.
It politicizes it.
Yeah, none at all. Number two, I don't think the prosecution should have brought this case. If they had the evidence, I think the local prosecutor would have pursued it. It's not that George Zimmerman was a fan of the police. He wasn't. He'd been kind of a gadfly to him. That's what the police have said there locally.
Yeah, no, he liked the police. They didn't like him so much.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is when you don't have the evidence, when your star witness really botches it, when your other star witness says, "Yeah, I really think he was afraid. He was afraid for his life," and then the third thing is to charge him with murder too. When there was a fight, you're going to lose. And so then, the judge did everything she could to get him convicted. I mean, I have never seen a judge go, well, even though the prosecution didn't file these things when they're supposed to, you can consider all these other charges as well.
Well, no, that's because they're underlying charges.
But he was found not guilty of all of them.
Well, no, I understand, but you can. It's the prosecution wasn't adding new charges. They were sort of all of the underlying charges that occur when you have this kind of case.
Right. So if you get murder 2, then they can find you anything less than murder 2.
If the elements are the same, if the prosecution didn't prove, because a prosecutor has to prove every element of every crime beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And so you can, in a death case, in a murder case, especially murder 2, there was some sort of intent involved. You have to prove malicious intent, or that like a hateful heart, that kind of stuff. Yep. Even though but you didn't have to prove premeditation. Yep. So if you could prove that there was some sort of like anger or anything less than a hateful heart, you could get manslaughter. I agree with you. I think that the crime was overcharged, but I still think they should have brought the case, because at the end of the day, you have a dead kid, and the only guy to tell the story is the guy that pulled the trigger.
But let's I don't think the case should have been brought. You can't bring a case simply based upon emotion, which is what happened here. I don't think they had enough evidence. I think that, the DOJ going after him now, I think, is a waste of our time and money.
I think they're going to decline that. I thought that's what I said today.
But it is a tragedy. I'm not trying to say the loss of Trayvon Martin was good. It's tragic. It's tragic. But the bottom line is, you know, George Zimmerman feared for his life. Now, this kind of segue.
Once again, that's not what the verdict means. The verdict means that the state did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed murder too.
But the bottom line is he felt his life was in jeopardy.
Based
and that's
on
what I'm
what?
saying. Because we had this argument in the street yesterday. I want to get to my crazy conspiracy theory.
Okay, well then go ahead. Go ahead.
So yeah, because I'm telling you what, maybe we should have just started with this and just had at it the whole time. We should have. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we'll blog about it since we're this close to getting our website going.
The whole show has devolved into just pantomimed nonsense at this point. But what's your conspiracy theory?
And this is from the lefties down there in Orlando and North Palm Beach. Several journalists have forwarded the idea that the prosecution, being white, went out of the way to make sure George Zimmerman didn't get convicted because of the way they proceeded in the case. Now that's the craziest one I've heard. I've heard other ones that, you know, it was a gang hit and George Zimmerman was a hit man and the rest of it. So it just tells you exactly how crazy all this stuff gets.
It's true. I heard on the other side of things that the only reason the case was brought in the first place was because Obama put pressure on the DOJ to go down and whip up all the protests that happened that brought the initial charges last year in the first place.
Well, it turns out that the DOJ does have a department that did go down and investigate Zimmerman. I mean, that's sure. I mean, they had a department that did that.
They were also present at the protests. They didn't participate in them though. That's the whole point.
But then there's the accusation they may have been funded and all that, you know. The prosecution.
It's a crazy conspiracy.
The prosecution purposely losing really is crazy. I don't know a lawyer yet they don't care. They're gonna win.
Yep.
Right. But this one, I mean, at least you go, all right, you know, Eric Holder's kind of flaky. He might have done it, but it's still pretty damn crazy.
I just think he's got enough. He's got enough on his plate dodging questions about gun running to Mexico than to get involved in a Florida murder.
Oh yeah,
tongue firmly planted in cheek, my friend.
Yeah, well, you know he does well because the media succinctly covered him as far as Fast and Furious goes. You know, it's just the IRS now that he has to worry about. He has to worry about the IRS coming after him. But you know, the bottom line is this is all a tragedy. It doesn't matter who got tried. George Zimmerman's life is essentially over. He's going to be hounded from place to place no matter what he does, unless he goes into, you know, changes his name and moves out of the town. Here he is getting his head bashed on the ground. This is the conversation Lefty and I had last week. Basically, if you have somebody yelling, I'm going to kill you, and is doing MMA kind of hits and is bashing your head on the ground, at what point do you go, well, I hope he doesn't kill me? Well, you know, Lefty and I disagree. I don't want to be a victim. Lefty says he hopes that, I mean, essentially, this is my words, but he basically hopes the guy stops before he's dead. And you're like, well, hold on. You know, don't get me wrong. George Zimmerman was wrong. He shouldn't have got out of his car. He should have control of his gun. That's why you don't get out of the car, right? But
does it change your calculus to know that he purchased a gun without a safety, and he purchased that gun because it didn't have a safety?
Well, I haven't heard that at all.
That's in the evidence.
I have a picture of the weapon.
That's in the evidence. I mean, when it comes to your
what do you mean by safety? One you have to click off, or one you have to grip?
I have no idea. It just
because there's several. Because I have a gun with a safety, but as soon as I grab it, safety's off and I'm ready to go.
Well, that's the disturbing thing to know about you, I guess. But
well, you know, if I'm going to have to point my gun at somebody and shoot them, I don't want to have to dick with the safety. I mean, that's really what it's for,
right? And
you know
what the evidence came in was that the gun was not secured by a safety at all. And when we're talking about bashing his head in, he had injuries to his head that the lead detective in the case said he felt that Zimmerman had exaggerated those injuries. That was testimony. And if you see the pictures, he got a split lip and he's got cuts in the back of his head. I don't know. But see, and that's the whole problem with the verdict. We weren't there, and the only other person who was there is dead. And do we want to have folks walking around with guns who really shouldn't be? Do you think that, here's last question. Should George Zimmerman have been allowed to possess a firearm knowing what we know now?
That is a gotcha question like you wouldn't believe.
That's
you got me on that one. Well, the bottom line is I'm going to tell you, yeah. At the time, he was a law-abiding citizen. He's still a law-abiding citizen. He made an error in judgment.
And he killed somebody.
Because he was in fear for his life.
So says him.
Well, if you're in fear for your life, you're in fear for your life. Whether you believe him or not is something else.
Mm-hmm.
He made this is one thing that I know. Whenever I see a train wreck in my office or in the ER, as far as a patient, it isn't just one thing that happened. It's an entire cascade of bad stuff that happened that finally accumulated. Whenever you look at a disaster, which is what this is, it's one thing after another with all kinds of good intentions winding up being crap at the end.
I agree with you that there's a lot more to it than just that particular night. I will say as sort of a parting shot that I personally not at you. Just at the last, and this will be the last I say about this. I do believe that the verdict was sound. I don't follow these national trials because I don't think it's really. I'm not in that community. I don't care. But from what I understand and how the thing has been reported, that the verdict was sound. And that I think that George Zimmerman's got a lot to answer for if the Martins file a civil action against him, wrongful death suit. I think he could be found liable. I think that there was, even if he didn't act with intent or any sort of with any criminal intent, it's definitely, in my opinion, grossly negligent and reckless to be carrying around a gun without a safety and to approach a young kid at night for really no legitimate reason. He really had from the testimony, he had no legitimate reason to be following him and approaching. That's all.
Well, I hope they do sue him so that they can get George Zimmerman up on the stand and ask him his version of it. I think it will clear up a lot of stuff. The problem is now you're going to be talking about a poor dead kid and dragging his reputation through the mud.
Well, they already did that, so there's not much more you could do to Trayvon Martin's reputation at this point.
Well, I will tell you, I feel sorry for the parents. I think the parents are a class act. I think they do, and my heart hurts for them. Hurts. Anyway, we're over by 3 minutes. We got to go. We'll be back here next week. Our website is really close to being up and going, so I'm hoping.
And we've got a guest next week who's coming in.
Oh yeah, State Auditor Mary Mossman is coming in.
That's a big deal.
She will be here for the entire hour, and I promise that both of us will be as well behaved as we could, because the only other person, because she's got the governor's ear. So if we get Mary Mossman, maybe we can strike at the governor.
And she's also the one that handles the money. So
yes, and it's always good to have a woman around that handles the money.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Get over here. Love both of them.